saying is, it is through remembrance that we keep our moral deliberation empowered, our moral discernment. Now, the other thing when engaging in Scripture is simply you have to admit this is a strange book. You are entering a strange world. People say, I feel really comfortable in the world of the Bible. I doubt it. It should make you feel incredibly uncomfortable because it is very, very strange. It is a strange world of sickness. More often than not, sickness is regarded as possession. It is a world that distrusts physicians. Your first thing when you were sick is it was better to go to a magician than a physician, because chances are the magician wouldn't kill you. There was a high probability the physician would. In fact, there is a curse in Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha that says, "Cursed be he who sins against his maker, may he fall into the care of a physician." So it is a world where sickness is something very different than how you and I think about it. It is an embarrassing world of patriarchy. You might as well admit it. Patriarchy is shot through the Bible. It's everywhere. It is an alien economic system. It is not anything like the economic system you and I participate in. It's based on patronage, slavery, and land. In our economic system, it's not. It is a different political order. You will not find Republicans and Democrats in the Bible. You find the empire, you find kingdoms, you find principalities. And remember, when Rome regarded itself as being inclusive. They included many different people in their empire, either willingly or unwillingly. And there's simply a diversity of moral teaching in Scripture. You will find there a command, if you're smacked on one cheek, what do? Turn the other. You can also find commands about annihilating people and their animals and their cities and put salt in the ground. When we turn to Scripture for moral guidance, we must keep these difficulties in mind. It is strange, it has a diversity of teachings, it is often silent on many matters. Nowhere in the Bible will you find whether or not taxes should be progressive or flat. Nowhere in the Bible will you find a direct command about whether you should perform in vitro fertilization or not. It is simply silent on many things. And finally, it is strange. Again, as we stressed. So that this is why when we approach Scripture, we have to be aware of its difficulties, and we have to be aware of an even deeper problem, that although we may read Scripture, we may not be formed by it. Rather, we abuse Scripture to justify ourselves as a weapon to judge others. So with all that awareness, I think a fair way of saying is we take a certain humility whenever we appeal to Scripture. And we use it lovingly and carefully, and we certainly don't try to make it do what it was never intended to do. By the way, I think the question of genre that was raised is really important. And to keep that in mind, that there are different genres in the Bible, and different genres will be read differently. I always like to irritate my colleagues that Garrett, as I identify myself as a biblical literalist, and they get apoplectic. And they want to know. I said I read poetry literally as poetry. I read history literally as history. I read theology literally as theology. So I'm a literalist. And I think that that's really the question of genre, is keep in mind what the genre is when you read the Bible. Different genres are meant to do different things. You can't do others. All right. Any questions generally on Scripture and ethics? Yes?
So in light of that, how does all of this, the thought of Christian ethics and how we make decisions as Christians as we are supposed to be called out and set aside?
Well, we're not done with the task yet. We've begun the scripture, but I think basically, as Christians, we affirm three things. Jesus is Lord of the church, Jesus is Lord of creation, and Jesus is Lord of the world. How do we know that? Well, we know from scripture, we affirm it through worship, and clarify it through doctrine. And that's what we're going to be doing through this people task. But it's important, I think, that this is what got Christians in trouble in the first place, was when they said Jesus is Lord. Because it was a slogan that went against the slogan, Caesar is Lord. What that's a way of saying is, I know who I belong to. And it's a reminder of loyalty. And there's a wonderful story. Are you familiar with the book Weapons of the Spirit? Okay, it's a wonderful book because it's about the Huguenots living in the south of France, helped thousands of Jews escape into Switzerland. And these are not sophisticated people. Okay? Pejoratively, you could say that they're hillbilly. But they remember when they were persecuted. And they still believe that Jews were God's chosen people. There's this wonderful scene where the Vichy government is trying, the Vichy government, the Gestapo know this is going on, but they can't stop it because they can't figure it out. They're not clever enough. So they decide they're going to intimidate the people. And they gather them all into the center of the city, and they're scolded. And basically told, there's going to be retribution. Well, Pétain is the leader of the Vichy government. When the speech is finished, they give the customary salute on the stage, Viva Pétain. He said there was a silence, and then a very small voice from the back of the crowd yelled, Jesus is Lord. And he said at that moment we knew we had lost. Because it was a remembrance about those people remembering who they belonged to, who they were really Lord. So that's, and your affirmation, Scripture is part of it, but it's not the whole story. We also have to take into account who is the Lord that we affirm and worship, who is the Lord that we clarify about. And that's why I can't really give you the answer at this point. I probably won't give you the answer anyway, because I'm not sure I know it. All right, any final questions? All right, well, let's go home and get an early start in NCIS.